What up, it's Greedy, and I'm going to explain to you how to do big deeps with Warlord and look good doing it. Before we get into it, I want to give you the story on why I started playing Warlord, along with maybe why you can trust a random nerd on the internet. If you're not interested and just want to get into the meat of it, skip to the big damage chapter and start from there. So yeah, I started playing as soon as KR came out, with high hopes of Lost Ark, just like you guys, anticipating the much awaited NA release, which is being delayed and neglected like a stepson by Big Daddy Amazon. Anyways, so the first class I picked was a Warlord, but I had no idea what the fuck I was doing and just winged it like much of everyone doing at the time. Fast forward a year and a half and I'm on my demonic doing mad deeps, and I see this Warlord and he's fucking flying, jumping around and smashing Levinos, and I was like, what the fuck? Warlords can fly? Indeed they can. And he did, right into the main frame of the family picture. What the fuck, man? I thought demonics were the best DPS by far at the time. So I made a Warlord. I studied this guy's build on a website where you can look up characters and their stats, and he was using combat engraving, which was unheard of at the time on KR. Everyone said Lonely Knight was better, but the results spoke for themselves. I would rarely see a Lonely Knight red build Warlord hit MVP, but this blue build, at the time it was just that one mystery Warlord and me, as far as I know, using the blue build. It was unpopular and frowned upon, but fuck me if I didn't hit every MVP at the time. Not to sound like an infomercial, I already do, but if played correctly and set up correctly, I believe this build is definitely one of the top DPS classes in the game. So without further ado, alright, so the main reasons why you should play Warlord are big damage, tanky, versatility, cheap, and it has a strong role. Let's get into each of these, starting with big damage. The biggest reason I believe that Warlord has such huge damage potential is because of its uptime. Warlord shield keeps you grounded and in permanent super armor state to unleash your rotation as you please. Boss about to do a knockup attack, Warlords don't care. So because you can always be in the boss's face at all times while mitigating damage and not getting knocked up, you're free to just go balls out as you please. And this leads into tankiness. This is part of the reason why you can do so much damage. It works hand in hand. Because you're so tanky, you're able to stay in the boss's face and deal the damage and have the uptime. So the tankiness comes from the Warlord combat engraving plus the specialization, which also ties into increasing your damage at the same time. So both of these work hand in hand just to make you a powerhouse. And later on I'll get into the exact build and how you want to stat your character to maximize these effects. Lost Ark isn't a trifecta game with the set healer, tank, and DPS roles, but some classes are frailer than others. Warlord is definitely by far the tankiest class in the game. With the proper timing and utilization of your shield, you won't take much damage. I rarely use potions. Once you know a boss's patterns, you can actually choose which moves to dodge and what not to, so you can get in more deeps, which coincides with the big damage once again. Versatility. So I would say Warlord is probably one of the most versatile classes in the game. You can be sort of a sub-support, which can shield other members, you can damage mitigate other members, and you can taunt the boss to either interrupt a really annoying cast that they might do, or just to have the boss train on you for a couple seconds until your party members can get their bearings, because there will be a lot of hectic moments during raids. Personally, it's up to you how supportive you want to be of your comrades, but usually the meta now seems to be that every Warlord at least carries the Neregia's shield, because it gives damage mitigation, shield, and cleansing of dots that your party may encounter. Personally, for me though, I've scratched that from my build, and you know, it's only because my group, my party raid members, they don't really mind. They're really good players. Our support are great, so I can do without the shield in exchange for more damage, which is what I love. And yeah, if you find a supportive group like that as well, I'll go over that build later on in the video. Cheap, because who doesn't like saving gold? You'll rarely guzzle down a pot with this build. It's also beginner friendly as far as building goes, because all you need is step 1 combat shield to get started, working your way towards getting to grudge 3 as you progress. You'll rarely drink pots unless you're caught with your pants down, or your shield down to be more exact, and I'll get more into this in the rotation section of the video. Strong roll. Basically you can do it all, like that Terry Crews Old Spice commercial. True to their name, warlords dictate the battlefield a lot of the time. By strong roll, I mean they can turn the tide of battle by protecting others and interrupting an annoying spell from a boss. Let's say your homie's about to get smashed. You can yoink the boss's attention and save them from dying or having to guzzle down a pot. So let's talk about the bad things about Warlord. There's only a few, but some of these might be significant enough for someone not to play Warlord, because they can be pretty significant, and it all comes down to preference, like with most classes in Lost Ark. The spacebar dodge, what I like to call the back jump, the turtle hop, the fat boy avoiding a puddle. It's not so hard to get a decent hang of, and takes a lifetime to master. This alone is a major reason why many people don't play the Warlord. It can get more confusing when you jump on the alt that's been collecting dust and realize you're dodging forward again and not backwards. And as for slowness, sometimes a Warlord can feel slow and clunky, let's say compared to a Battlemaster or a Striker. If you like ultra responsive and tactile classes with the feeling of full control, you may want to consider another class. Warlord takes precision, but it costs a lot more mechanical precision to get the results you want at times. Alright, so let's get down to the nitty gritty of how to do big deeps and slap the fat schmeat on these bosses. Let's start with how this build works and the main engraving that makes it so. Light shield or combat shield engraving. It increases damage to all your normal skills, your blue skills, by 20%, your shield by 30%, and when your shield is up, you can gain 4% damage when you hit an enemy, which stacks up to 3 times. That's a total of 32% damage increase right off the bat for a step 1 engraving, which is pretty sweet. But that's not all.
But wait! There's more!
The second most important part of this build is your stat distribution. Specialty will increase your shield gauge requirement and your blue skill damage. At 1460 spec, you can see my blue skills hit for almost 230% more damage. The small amount of crit you see that I have is from the secondary stat on the necklace. Some people prefer to put more crit, but in my experience, specialty with flat damage increase has worked best for me. Crit can be acquired in other ways, such as through cards, armor set bonuses, and party buffs, and for Warlord, in my opinion, crit starts having diminishing returns when you realize how much more flat damage you can stack with specialty instead. For example, let's say you put 500 of those points into crit, you would get around 18% more crit chance, but lose around 80% flat damage. When you realize that a crit is only twice as strong as a normal hit, it's better to equip the flat damage, which is almost as strong as a crit. And when those specialty jack numbers actually do crit, you will see some giant, juicy numbers. Not only this, but because specialty also affects your shield, you can take more damage and have more uptime on the boss, which is essential in churning out the big deeps. For engravings, you want to have 1 step in combat shield and max out grudge first. Since your build is already so defensive, you won't feel the 20% increased damage taken while dealing 20% extra damage to enemies. Second is barricade, since it has no negative side effects. Since your shield will always be up in order to maximize your combat shield engraving, this is an easy choice for Warlord. Next up after this is varied from steady state to cursed all. I would like to experiment with the new adrenaline engraving though, which I think would suit this build quite nicely. As for skills, I'll go over the standard build first that includes Neurasia's aura. At 300 skill points, you can have 5 level 10 skills and 3 level 7 skills. If you're working with less skill points, I'd take out from either Shield Dash or Neurasia's aura, which are 2 out of the 3 level 7 skills. The other level 7 skill, Bash, it's important to keep the second tripod on, which increases your attack power, which I'll go over in the rotation section of this video. As for tripods, go with everything that gives more damage. For some skills that don't have damage tripods, everything else is optional from mana reduction to defensive tripods, and for runes it's the same. Although I would recommend continuous rune, which has a chance to reduce your cooldowns on the longer CD and harder hitting skills. If you want to copy my exact build, which I don't recommend since the optional tripods depend more on your playstyle and how you handle situations during a fight, depending on how many people may be interested, leave a comment and I can post a copy of the build in the description. At 312 skill points, you can go full DPS build. Now I should put a disclaimer here because Warlord is still widely known for their utility and sub-support role that they're capable of. But you know, if you just want to say, hey, I don't want to be normalized by standard of everyone else's thoughts, just like how everyone frowned on this exact build for over a year while it was just as strong, if not stronger, do what you want, man. Be free. If you want to just do DPS, you should be able to just do DPS, but make sure you do it well. Aside from letting down normie expectations, it'll help if you have an actual support in the group, which is 99% true in all progress raid settings. So we replaced Narasia's aura with Burst Cannon. I know it's a red skill, but at level 10 it still hits like a sledgehammer and is well worth to take. The destruction attribute on it helps as well. Now that you've seen how to build the combat warlord, how to go about beating some monsters like a dusty rug for their fat loots, I'll give you a very simple rotation which should be standard in all combat builds and tell you why. We start with Warrior Scream because it gives us a huge boost of shield gauge. This will be the move in which you taunt and build your shield gauge with. I feel like a lot of combat lords don't know this golden rule and run around without a shield. That is #1 blasphemy. As a good rule of thumb, your shield should be up at all times aside from running to the boss, or running away from a wipe mechanic. There will be a few times when you miss the scream or get it interrupted in which you'll be shieldless. In this case, you can build it with other blue skills which won't give nearly as much shield gauge, but it's better to do this than nothing. Turn your shield back on as soon as possible to keep your light shield and barrier engraving active. Next, we go in with Shield Thrust. Now this move is going to be your bread and butter. It has deceptively long range and it covers a good distance to get to the boss. You'll see yourself using this a lot to cover short distances when the boss moves. It's perfect since you don't have to deactivate your shield to run and it's on the shortest cooldown of all your movement skills. It does decent damage too. Since you will be warrior screaming on initiation from a short distance away not to get hit and interrupted, Shield Thrust is the perfect move to close the distance and apply an armor debuff on the boss via the tripod on it. As soon as you cover that distance and are literally hugging the boss, hit him with a bash. This can also armor debuff the boss as well as boost your attack power depending on your tripods. Now that you have armor debuff and attack power boost, it's time to hit him with the big moves, going right into Guardian Thunder, then into leap attack. Usually by this time, the boss is moving around or doing some funky bullshit, so the leap attack is perfect to close the distance while doing massive damage. Leap attack is going to be one of the fastest gap closers and jumps pretty far. Another reason to not let your shield down. From here you can go to any move that you may need, whether it be Narasia Aura or Rush Shield. The main thing to remember is this opening sequence and to try and have both buff and debuff up when you're hitting your big damage skills. Use the Scream on cooldown to keep your shield up unless the boss calls for an important interruption taunt. If this is the case, you want to dodge as much as possible, at least the boss's big hits that may take a chunk out of your shield. Now that you know how to Warlord, or Gunlance as NA will call it, I hope you find some of this useful in the future and can enjoy being a big boss. I've had a crazy love-hate relationship with this game, but all in all I've got to say that it's been fun as hell, and the game is massive. I really hope the NA release goes well and that you can all enjoy the fuck out of this game. If you have any questions, just drop a comment. I'd like to make more content in the future, mostly regarding the state of Lost Ark and how you can have more fun in it. So if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like and subscribe for more similar content. Thanks for watching.